Okay. So good evening, everyone. We're just getting a few things sorted here for this open house, and then I will jump right into my presentation. I just have a few participants to rename. I'm just going to ask if everyone could please turn your video off and make sure you are muted. A few things sorted here for this open house, and then I will jump right into my presentation. I just have a few. Okay. And I'm hoping, I know Councillor Kushner was trying to join in, but was having trouble hearing us. So I just want to confirm that that has been resolved. Councillor Kushner, can you hear us?
Hi, is that Evan? Yes, I'm.
Okay, I think Evan is working to help me out.
It said the host has muted me.
Okay.
Can you? I can't hear anybody now.
Hi, Councillor Kushner, can you hear me? Okay, we're still working on that. And if I can just ask again, all participants who are registered, if you can please turn off your video and mute yourselves before we get started. Okay. I just want to get confirmation that Councillor Kushner can hear us, because I know that he would like to participate in the open house tonight and hear what's happening. I apologize for the delay. It'll just be a minute. Okay. I'm looking to see Councillor Kushner. Can you hear me? No, I'm not getting an indication that he can.
Okay. Yeah, we are now live on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
And the stream is working. So I apologize for the folks joining us on YouTube. We're just having a slight technical issue, but we'll be starting very soon.
Thanks, Evan. And do I have host capabilities now?
Yes, you do.
Okay, thank you.
Guys, I still can't hear Taya.
Okay. While we give Councillor Kushner just another minute to hopefully resolve the audio issues. Just looking to see that everyone else has joined the meeting. We do have quite a few people on. And again, I'm just going to ask that everyone, all participants, please remain muted.
I just want to make it clear, it's John Crossingham speaking, that I do not want this meeting to proceed if one of the people who has a vote can't hear. This is an open house, and if it isn't open to everybody and they can't hear, it should not proceed.
Okay, thank you, John. Yes, I'm just going to give a few minutes for Councillor Kushner to see if we can resolve the audio issue, but I do recognize we have a lot of people on the
No,
call
I
tonight
can't
who are
hear
here
you.
for the information. And I would like to make sure that everyone can have the benefit of the information, and we certainly will make sure that Councillor Kushner is provided all of the same information as well. And I have hope that we can get his audio issue resolved so he can hear this quite shortly. I know he's on the phone, clearly working with somebody very hard to sort out those issues. So again, thank you for your patience. And I definitely want to give Councillor Kushner the chance to sort this out and then proceed so that everyone who is here and taking time out of their day can also take in all of this information. So thank you. I'm just going to give it 2 more minutes and then I will start. So I'm just going to keep talking so that if Councillor Kushner does resolve it, he can actually hear me so that there's not just silence. So I just want to make sure that this can hopefully work in the next minute so we can get started.
Taya, quick question. Are there representatives from the Development Corporation, Ambria, present tonight?
There are, and I will be introducing them in my presentation shortly.
Okay, thank you kindly.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Kushner, I'm just looking for any acknowledgement that you can hear me at this point. I'm not seeing a nod. It is 6:10, so just recognizing everyone's time, I am going to get started with the presentation. And I do hope that—
Can I just make a suggestion? It's Councillor Harris. Could
Yes.
someone reach out to Joe and perhaps ask him, let's delay this and have him call in again and see if it works, if it connects?
So yeah, I'm in the process of trying to get Joe to call in.
Because I want to acknowledge too, like what some of the constituents have said, they don't really want to proceed with this meeting if Councillor Kushner can't participate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes. So Evan, if you are able to connect with Councillor Kushner and find out if there's a way for him to try and sign in again, either by phone or just restarting Zoom, that would be really appreciated.
I sent him the phone link and he can follow along on YouTube while he gets his connection straightened out.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for the suggestion, Councillor Harris.
Hello?
Hi, is that Colleen?
Yes.
Do you
So
have a
I just
question?
have a question. We do it at my work, and if someone can't hear, they just put their phone, someone calls them so they can hear it. Is that
Okay.
feasible for you?
Yes, I think he's actually just called in, so he might try participating via phone. Thank you, Colleen. I see we have a phone that has called in. Is that Councillor Kushner? No, now it's gone. Okay. Sorry, everyone. Again, I appreciate everyone's patience. We're just trying to sort out some audio connection issues to make sure that Councillor Kushner is able to hear the meeting. He does show up as a participant. He's been able to join the meeting, but he's not able to hear anything that I've been saying. So we want to make sure that that's resolved, which is causing just a bit of a delay. to the start of our meeting, but we will get started very shortly. I appreciate everyone's patience. Okay. Are you able to hear us now, Councillor Kushner? Okay. We will keep trying. This is bound to work at some point. I do see that a phone has joined, ending in 843. Is that Councillor Kushner?
Enter your meeting ID followed by #.
Okay. So it sounds like Councillor Kushner is trying to join in over the phone. And I think just has to get through a few of the administrative prompts. So I'm hopeful that within a few minutes here, again, I appreciate everyone's patience. Okay. Let's see.
David Cooperman, excuse my naivety, but if Joe is on a phone, how is he going to hear? And Matt and Joe are very important to this meeting. If he can't hear what some of these submissions are, I would further John Crossingham, I don't know if it's a motion, that this meeting be adjourned.
So thank you,
Yeah,
David, for the
David.
question. Oh, is that Councillor Kushner?
David? Yeah, it's Joe Kushner. I'm on my phone. I can hear, but I can't do it on my iPad. I'll try my iPad once more. Okay, you can see me on my iPad?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, but I can hear you from my telephone. Can you hear me from my telephone?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, so I can participate on my telephone then.
Excellent. So that's great. Thank you, Councillor Kushner. I'm glad you were able to join us this way. What I'm going to do is mute your telephone so that we can't hear anything you're saying. But if you do want to say anything, I can unmute you, or I believe you can unmute yourself by pressing *6.
Okay,
Okay, so I'm just going to mute you and then I'll begin my presentation.
right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, excellent. Thanks everyone again for your patience. I'm very glad that we were able to sort that out and that Councillor Kushner and Councillor Harris are able to join us. So I'm going to just pull up my presentation and share my screen so that everyone can see this. Okay. I'll just look that that's sharing okay. You can see it. Perfect. Thank you. So after a bit of a bumpy start, but we got there. Good evening and welcome to the online open house to discuss a proposed site plan for 150 Glendale Avenue. My name is Taya Devlin and I am a planner with the City of St. Catharines. If you have any questions about this proposal or wish to provide any comments either during or after the open house, you can contact me by email at tdevlin@stcatharines.ca or by phone at 905-688-5601, extension 1727. Please note, I will not be able to respond to any emails or phone calls live during this open house. However, I will be following up in the coming days. I would also like to thank those of you who have already provided comments and questions in writing and over the phone, and note that I have not replied to all inquiries that have been received, but will be doing so in the coming days as well. I will have this contact information up again at the end of my presentation for you to take note of in case any questions come to you by the end. So for this open house, I will be providing this presentation to review the proposal. The applicant and agent are present, as well as Ward Councillor Kushner and Councillor Harris. There are 26 people who registered to participate via Zoom, and following my presentation, I will be calling on each participant in the order that they registered to provide their comments and ask any questions that they have. I will ask that all participants please keep their video off and microphones muted until I call upon you. The open house is being streamed live to the city's YouTube page, and the video will be available for viewing after the open house as well. So the purpose of tonight's open house is to present and discuss the application for site plan that has been submitted, which proposes development of 72 units at 150 Glendale Avenue. The authority to approve site plan applications has been delegated by council to the Director of Planning and Building Services. At this time, there are no active or anticipated applications requiring council approval for the proposed development. An open house is not required by the Planning Act for site plan applications. However, City of St. Catharines Council has directed that an open house occur to inform the public of applications for site plan approval and have a discussion about the proposal itself. The property at 150 Glendale Avenue is located on the south side of Glendale Avenue, directly across from Woodgale Park, between Wakel Drive and Valerie Drive. The property has frontage on both Glendale Avenue, which is a regional arterial road, and Valerie Drive, which is a local road. The site is approximately 1.08 hectares in size and currently contains the Mountain View United Church and associated parking. The application proposes development of a total of 72 units. Those units consist of 55 stacked townhouse units, which are considered apartments by the city's zoning bylaw, and 17 townhouse units. A total of 114 parking spaces are proposed to be accommodated within the site in garages, driveways, and surface parking. Access to the site is proposed from the existing southern entrance from Valerie Drive, and 2 pedestrian connections are proposed to Glendale Avenue. Blocks 1 through 4 are proposed stacked townhouses totaling 55 units, and blocks 5 through 8 are proposed townhouses totaling 17 units. Throughout the open house, various property lines may need to be identified. For reference, the colored lines indicate how each property line is considered in the city zoning bylaw. So we have the blue lot line, which is the front easterly lot line along Valerie Drive. The orange along Glendale is the exterior side lot line along the northern boundary of the property. The rear lot line is the purple line along the west, and the interior side lot lines are along the south, shown in green. The city's official plan designates the subject lands low-density residential, which permits a variety of dwelling types at a density range generally between 20 and 32 units per hectare. Height of buildings will generally not exceed 11 meters. The official plan does allow for an increase from low-density residential to medium-density residential, provided the appropriate zoning provisions are in place. Medium-density residential in the official plan permits a variety of residential unit types, including townhouses and apartments, at a density generally between 25 and 99 units per hectare. Height of buildings will generally not exceed 20 meters. The subject lands are currently zoned community institutional, I2, which permits a variety of institutional uses, such as a place of worship, as well as the residential uses permitted in the medium density residential zone, R3. The R3 zone permits a density range of 25 to 99 units per hectare and allows for a private road development consisting of townhouses and apartment buildings, in this case, the stacked townhouses. As a general overview of the proposed site plan, it consists of 72 units, which results in a density of 66 units per hectare, which is within the permitted 25 to 99 unit per hectare range. The maximum height permitted for townhouses in the R3 zone is 11 meters. The townhouses are proposed to a maximum height of 10.22 meters. Since the subject site is located on a regional arterial road, the maximum height permitted for apartment buildings is 20 meters. The stacked townhouses, which are considered apartment buildings under the city's current zoning bylaw, are proposed to a maximum height of 11.45 meters. The zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 1.25 parking spaces per unit. With 72 units, a minimum of 90 parking spaces are required. And at least 35% of the lot area shall be landscaped open space. The proposal provides for 37.8%. While the proposed dwelling types, density, and height are permitted by the current zoning bylaw for the site, 8 zoning deficiencies have been identified on the submitted plan. The applicant has recently submitted an application for minor variance, which will be considered by the Committee of Adjustment on April 28th. Separate public notice will be mailed out and posted on the site regarding the application for minor variance. The variances that have been requested are to reduce the required width for a parking space obstructed on 2 sides from 3.5 meters to 3 meters. All of the garages on site are proposed to have a width of 3 meters. To reduce the number of accessible spaces on site from 3 spaces to 2, and to reduce the distance between a private road and dwelling from 3 meters to 2.35 meters. So these areas are generally indicated on this plan in red, and there is a location map at the top left-hand corner of the screen, just so you can keep your bearings on where on the site these variances pertain to. There's a request for a reduction of the setback from an exterior side yard, which is Glendale Avenue, to a platform structure from 5 meters to 3.18. To reduce the setback from a front lot line, which is Valerie Drive, to an apartment building from 5 meters to 4.81, and to a platform structure from 5 meters to 2.98. To reduce the minimum setback from a rear lot line to an apartment building from 11.16 meters to 5.5 meters. The rear yard setback for an apartment building is required to be equivalent to the height of the building, while the interior side yard setback for an apartment building is required to be equivalent to half the height of the building. So this property is a bit unique because it does have that frontage on 2 roads. And then the other variance is for reduction in the setback from an interior side yard to a platform structure from 5 meters to 4.79. So this plan here is an illustration, a color illustration of the landscape plan. So it shows the grassed areas as well as the proposed plantings for trees and shrubs throughout the site. And then these are colored elevations to show as an example what the facades would look like for each of the building types. So this is an example of the stacked townhouse block facing Glendale or Valerie, what it would look like from the street. This is an example of the stacked townhouse, one of the internal blocks, so blocks 3 and 4. And then this is an example of the townhouse blocks, blocks 5 through 8. Towards the south end of the site. So as next steps, comments received will be considered by staff. Staff will continue to follow up to emails, calls, and questions that have been submitted or continue to be brought forward. Any general themes that we hear from the feedback today and throughout those comment letters will be discussed in greater detail with the applicant and agent. Staff will continue to review the site plan. The plans that we've circulated are the current plans and they are not final, they have not been approved. So there is continuous work that will be taking place on those. The application for minor variance has been submitted. And as I said earlier, separate notice will be mailed out and posted on site regarding the process. And that application is to be considered by the Committee of Adjustment on April 28th. And down the road, prior to any construction taking place on site, building permits will be required. So again, please submit any comments or questions about this proposal to myself, Taya Devlin, planner with the City of St. Catharines, by email at tdevlin@stcatharines.ca, or by phone at 905-688-5601, extension 1727. I thank you all for joining us this evening, and I will now ask the applicant and their agent if they wanted to add anything before we proceed to hear from those people in attendance. So I'm going to just leave this up on the screen and then maybe look to Mike or Robin. Did you have anything to add?
Yes, hi everyone, and my name is Mike Pettigrew with the Big Leary Group. Thank you, Taya. That was a very fulsome presentation. So we don't have anything really to add. I think that summarized the proposal quite well. You've seen the landscape plan, the site plan, and the elevations. I think there's a lot of people here today, and I think our real interest is just to listen, find out what the feedback is, and then continue to work with staff. So just quickly to introduce, because I know there's tons of names here, Robin Stember from the Big Leary Group is here as well. She and I are working on the file, and there she is. And Vince Baffa and Paula Agostino are from Ambria, and they are the developers and builders. And they had been working with United Church on the sale of this property, they've obviously come forward with their consulting team on this proposal that's here. Ambria has 20 plus years between the principals, probably 40 plus years. Sorry, Vince. But they have the extensive experience in developing and building anywhere from singles, medium density, mid-rise, high-rise. They've done developments which are Stouffville, East Gwillimbury, Pickering, Toronto. They've kind of gone all over Southern Ontario. So they have done this type of development before in the past, and they are very experienced and very reputable builders. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone sees them. And there's Vince. He'll be able to answer any questions you may have as well. And I think really that's it. I think we'll just turn off our mics and listen in to all the delegates. And thanks everyone for being here. Vince, or do you have anything else to add there, Vince?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Mike and team. I think the next, I just want to check in with Councillor Kushner. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Councillor? And I'm just going to see if I can unmute you on the phone.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a bit of an echo.
Okay, the question. Here, I'll turn off my phone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I can't hear you though.
Okay.
Okay, I'll have to go back to my phone, but my question is, I understand some of the units will be 3-4 bedrooms, which is somewhat unusual for St. Catharines. And is this in response to people purchasing the units and renting the students?
Okay, so the number of bedrooms is not something that is controlled through any zoning bylaw. We just look at the dwelling types. I can say that, a 3 or 4 bedroom home is not unheard of in St. Catharines in a detached dwelling, and these are townhouses and stacked townhouses. As far as it being targeted for student rental, I don't know that that's the intent, and maybe Mike and your team, you may want to speak to that, but I will say from the city's perspective with rental, if a unit is rental, it can be rented to anybody. And that is part of the rental market, is how it would work is to anyone in need of a rental unit. I don't know if Mike, you wanted to add anything?
I think I can start, and then Vince, if you want to talk briefly on the marketing program. But these are intended to be condominium ownership. They're not intended to be rentals. So this will be condominium ownership. There is nothing that prevents someone from renting even a single family home to someone. But that is not the intent here. These are condo market rate units. There is a variety. There are 3 different types, and even in those types, there are interior and exterior units. So there's quite a variety of what's there. They are not individually very large units either. So I don't believe that they would be, and Vince, I mean, you can let me know about what you think on the marketing side of it. But they are smaller family entry-level units. They're not intended to be any type of particular housing, student housing, anything like that. These are going to be sold on the market as any other development would be.
Yeah, so through to Councillor Kushner, yeah, the intention here, again, is the product, the size of the square footages that we have is really more conducive to 3 bedrooms. And I was just flipping and just taking a look through the floor plans that we have. And again, predominantly they are 3 bedrooms. And it's not our intention to market this thing specifically as a student rental housing project. It's our full intention here, but that's not our cup of tea. We've never done that before. We're straight to market builders. And that's our intention. I mean, what happens after the fact, obviously, we can't have any control of that, but we're not marketing it. We're not gearing it towards student housing. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Kushner, I'm going to put you back on mute if that's okay.
Right.
Thank you. And Councillor Harris, did you have any sort of opening comments?
I just want to clarify the actual process. So this is an open house. You're looking for comments from the community and the people that are affected by this build. So what is the process? You're going to collect all the information, then you're going to work with the developer. And how do we know that the concerns of the citizens are going to be addressed? And if they're not addressed, what method is available for those citizens' concerns to be heard at all? How's that?
That's a great question. So the process, the way it works here with the site plan is that the land use permissions are in place to permit the development that has been proposed. For the most part, as I noted, there are some variances that have been identified and that the applicant has submitted an application to address. So with site plan, when we have the land use permissions in place, typically there isn't a public process associated with site plan approval. It's something that is unique to the city of St. Catharines, at least as far as I'm aware, that we have these open houses to inform everyone on what applications are coming through, what the city is considering, how it does comply with the land use permissions, and what it looks like. And the comments that we receive are helpful to us to understand that experience from those people who live in the area. As planners, we have an understanding of the land use permissions, but I haven't lived everywhere in the city. So hearing the feedback from those people who do live in this neighborhood and what they experience day to day can be very valuable. The way that we can sort of address concerns really is we take notes today, then reflect on all of those themes and work with the applicant to look at the proposal and figure out what areas within the proposal there are to address some of those concerns, and wherever possible we do. I'll give a brief example just to sort of illustrate this process. A previous open house I had, one of the trees that was being proposed on the landscape plan was brought to my attention, produces a very smelly fruit, and the neighborhood was not willing to have that kind of tree planted, and so they requested an alternative, and that's something that we absolutely can accommodate through this process. But things like if the requests deal with the land use permissions on the height and the types of units that are being proposed, that's not something that we're going to be able to change because those permissions are in place through the applicable zoning bylaw. So I hope that helps answer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Excellent. And just a note on that too, there is, as I say, those variances. So there will be a separate process to address those. And that is a public process that additional notice will be provided about that. Okay, so we are officially half an hour in, and I know we have a lot of people who would like to speak. So I'm going to get started with the participants who registered, and I'm just going to call on them in the order that they registered, and then ask that they turn on their video, unmute themselves, If you are watching the live stream on YouTube, please make sure that it is muted. If you unmute your mic and you have the YouTube stream playing in the background, it will create an echo for everyone watching. So please make sure that YouTube is muted. And then when I call upon you, turn on your video and unmute yourself. And because we do have so many people, wherever possible, please keep your comments concise and ideally under 5 minutes. And if somebody ahead of you has already addressed your comments, if you can maybe just say your comment has been addressed and then provide any new information, that would be greatly appreciated. And as I said, again, any comments or questions after the open house can be sent to my email or give me a call. So the first participant that I want to call on is John Black. John, if you could please turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and everybody else, if you can keep your cameras off and unmuted, we'll give John his time.
Thank you, Taya. My name is John Black. I've lived at number 17 Valerie Drive since 1970. It's been a wonderful place to raise our children. And now that we're getting older, for my wife and I to walk Valerie Drive in the afternoons. I see nothing positive for us and the other residents of Valerie Drive and adjacent streets coming out of the proposed development. One of my biggest concerns is the problems that will be caused by the many cars used by the residents of the development. Currently, it's very difficult to enter Glendale Avenue from Valerie Drive due to the large density of cars traveling along Glendale. What I fear is that to avoid delays getting off or on Glendale, many of the residents of the proposed development will drive south along Valerie Drive. This, I believe, will lead to a more or less nonstop movement of cars along Valerie. I also suspect that many people will park along Valerie. It will no longer be possible for us to have a safe and quiet walk along the drive. Because of this problem, I believe the proposed development is not a suitable addition to our residential area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. So I'm just taking notes on your comments, and then if there are any questions in there, I will try and answer them. But I think I heard your comments loud and clear that traffic is the main concern there and the impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So thank you. And excellent. Next, Sarah Meow.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving me this chance to speak. My name is Sarah Miao. Before I start, I have to say English is not my first language. So if I may have some misunderstandings about what you say, I apologize for this. Please bear with this. Generally speaking, I have 3 concerns. First, as new immigrants, we moved to Canada in 2016, and we bought this property at Queen's Court in 2017. One of the most reasons why we buy this property is because its backyard is connected with an open, quiet place, and the neighborhood is made up with bungalows, which having created a nice and quiet atmosphere for people living here. I have some health issues, which I mentioned in the letter, and that's one factor why we bought this property. We appreciate a nice and quiet community. This planned construction will bring 72 units in such a confined, U-shaped small area. Its adjacent houses are detached bungalows, raised bungalows. Along this U-shaped area, you can see there are 5 neighborhoods: Valerian Drive, Queen's Court, Princess Anne Circle, Jasmine Crescent, Waco Drive. If you're just counting the land area, which is within 200 meters distance from the church, there are just about 60 houses. The acreage of this planned construction area is just 1/5 compared with its surrounding neighborhood land area, but will pack 1.2 times houses than its neighborhood. There is no new entrance road connecting with Glendale Avenue. and no new recreational facility, no new social or religious place. It is foreseeable that this planning will bring huge traffic problems and bring potential risks to seniors and children living here, and bring unusual noise here, environmental issues. Studies show that the crime unrest behavior will escalate in high density population area. So this planning with such a density will take away the value we paid for and will devalue my property, which bring me a huge loss. Second, this neighborhood is low density residential area, which is R1 zone. I don't understand why planning to build so much 11-meter high houses in a bungalow featured neighborhood. Once it constructed, it will deliberately change the feature of this neighborhood, which I think is an intentional thought of aesthetic nuisance, also with noise nuisance. The high-rise building, from its upper level story, people can look into the abutting house backyard directly, which suddenly take away the privacy. Like me, I couldn't enjoy my backyard as same as before. My family privacy will be destroyed. I think it is an intrusion of individual privacy once it's constructed. The last one, I fully understand the city needs development. More suitable living place should be built for more people. But what I don't understand is making people live better more important, or make more taxable revenue, which is 72 units important. So, sorry. This planned construction will bring huge negative traffic problems, safety problem, noise problems, not to say changing a nice and quiet neighborhood to a not better anymore living place. I don't understand what's the standpoint of this planning. It's money, everything. 8 Valerian Drive, which is the nearest house to the church, the owner side. As soon as they received the notice, they sold out the property right away. This planning frightened local residents away. So please, protecting local residents' living conditions, making us live better, don't ruin it, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. As I say, I'm taking notes on all of these comments, and then I do know a number of people have sent in their comments in writing, and I'll be getting back to them as well. So next person, just in kind of hearing from everybody here, the next person on the list is Rebecca Lewis. Just want to see, do we have Rebecca?
Hello, there we are. How are you?
Hi. Good, thank you.
So I have a number of questions. I believe there's going to be a number of statements by my fellow neighbors. And I share all their sentiments about the added traffic and parking issues. But I have some specific questions I would like to ask. So the first question is to the builders. What is going to be the average expected sale price of the units? You say you don't expect renters, but I do know what the mortgage cost would be, and it would have to be fairly high to avoid investment buyers.
We're not at the point right now we have any price lists. We're still obviously trying to get to the planning stages. So a little early to call as far as that, unfortunately.
Well, on your website, you say starting in the low 400s, and I'm going to guess that the cost of a small unit like that is going to be around $500,000. $500,000 is a very easy cost for a renter or for an investor to purchase the unit and then rent out the bedrooms at $500 a piece. So to say that you're not gearing it towards renters is kind of a moot point at the rates that you're at the cost that you're talking about. I'm wondering why you don't look at higher end units to avoid the rental issue.
If I can.
Go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in and say that no matter what the unit price is, there is nothing to prevent the unit from being offered for rent by the owner or anybody. So just to be clear that there is not a way to control that it is not rentable.
Taya, I fully understand that, but we also understand economics and what the going price for the bedrooms are around Brock University. Going price for a place like that is easily $700 a bedroom. You know, at a $2,000 a month mortgage, these are going to be rental units very easily. If you have a house that's worth $900,000, it's a lot harder to justify an investor to justify purchasing this for rental units. So that was one of my first questions. My next questions are about the engineering plans. First one is going to be about the traffic study. The traffic study was definitely a flawed study. It was performed on January 23rd of 2020 between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. And then they took a lunch break or something, then 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., missing those key times in the middle of the day. Also, in the middle of winter is not a very indicative time of what the traffic is along. They added the traffic coming in and out of the church as 2 intersections, which is ridiculous. I am wondering if a full traffic study will be performed and if construction might be put on hold if we don't have a proper traffic study done.
So the traffic impact study was not a requirement of the city, that's a requirement of the region. And the region reviews the study and it's based on their technical requirements in their master plans. So that study has been reviewed by the region and the region will be commenting on the site plan with that study in mind. And if they have any concerns with it, they would ask for a revision. I don't know that there's anything at this point that would, to my knowledge, the region has not requested an updated study. They were satisfied with what has been submitted.
Do you have contacts with the region where we can voice our displeasure with this traffic study?
So there are, yes, the planners at the region that could be contacted about the traffic study, but it's probably best if you have specific questions or comments about the traffic study, if you send them to me and then I can coordinate them and send it to the region as sort of one package. We could do it that way to make it
okay,
consolidated.
Okay, I can work on that.
And if I could, just to add to that on the traffic windows, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't answer the details, specific details on it. But those 2 timeframes are the peak AM and the peak PM. So though that is how the studies are set up, they are intended to look at what the traffic volume at its highest in the morning for the commute and into the evening. So those are actually the time windows for traffic studies. So that is why those time windows were specifically picked. That's the requirement.
I do understand that, but I am saying that this is a flawed study because of the student population locally. Also, it's a flawed study because it was done in the middle of winter. It's also a flawed study because it doesn't take into account the traffic of the mall. Midday is one of the highest, if not the highest, traffic peak time in our area.
So again, I can't answer all the questions, but I do know that inside of that study, it also took into account based on what the requirements are from the municipality. It's also taken into account this development that's being proposed, as well as projected growth in the area. So
Actually, your
the traffic-
development, the study actually, it was planning for 52 units, not the 72 units that you were asking for. So it didn't take into account the development properly.
So again, as Tay already mentioned, the study and the requirements, I'm not the traffic guy, so I apologize, I can't get into those specifics, but the report itself had met the guidelines from the region, and those were the requirements for how a proper traffic study is conducted. And so that's, we've followed those guidelines that were provided for a traffic study for this development.
The next question that I have has to do with the service and stormwater report. Within this report for flooding, 100-year flood, it was saying that on-site storage and control must be provided on-site. So that means underground cisterns, something along those lines, I assume. The other element, also it does require its own sewage line. I assume all of that will be taken into account properly by the builders and no corners will be cut.
Yes, so the stormwater management and servicing to the site is all reviewed by the city's engineering department and the region to their satisfaction and to make sure that it meets the standards.
Yep. And then finally, my last question has to do with the oil and grit separator units. They are suggested for outlets number 1 and 4, or number 1 and 2. I thought it was 4. That's moot. But who is going to be responsible for the maintenance of these CDS units?
So through the site plan agreement, the applicants are in an agreement with the city to comply with all of the design elements and the layout and the stormwater and the approved engineering. So that's all taken care of through the agreement with the city on the site plan. If it's, and I'm not an engineer, so if it's on their site, it's their responsibility to maintain.
Okay, yeah, because these, there's a large section at the back of the report that goes in about the maintenance that's required on these units. I'm not sure what the frequency is going to be required, but it's definitely required. Now, my understanding of developers is that they come in, they develop, they sell, and they leave. So somebody has to be managing these utilities afterwards. I'm just wondering who that is.
Yeah, if you allow me, Rebecca, so what this is going to be, obviously, the ultimate owners of this thing are obviously going to be a condo corporation. So obviously, maintenance fees of the condominium corporation, that'll pick up all that. We always strive to make sure that whatever requirements are given to us through the site plan agreement, we make sure that those obviously roll into the documentation for the condominium purchases as well. So we always make sure that there's an obligation for somebody.
My final question is directly to you, Taya. In the traffic study, there was no comment about the lack of sidewalks that we have on our street. The entire neighborhood, with the exception of along Glendale and Glenridge, we don't have sidewalks. So with this added traffic, what is the likelihood that you're going to be adding sidewalks to our street?
So I think through this development, sidewalks will be part of this specific development, but
no, on Valerie Drive specifically.
Yep. So continuing on Valerie Drive, I don't know off the top of my head that there would be any plans for the city to tackle those sidewalks on their own. I'd have to look into the larger plan with our engineering department on if that's even within the work plan.
What are the what triggers development of sidewalks on a city street?
So it's when there's new developments.
Maybe I could, it's Councillor Harris. In the past, different neighborhoods have come forward, and then usually there's a report produced and engineering figures out if it's doable, if it's reasonable, and then they put it into a work plan. So an example of that would be the west side of Van Sickle by Club Roma. A few years back, we got a sidewalk installed. So if it's something the neighborhood wants, typically it's the councilors advocate on behalf of the neighborhood.
So it's usually a request of the citizens in the neighborhood for this.
Typically.
Okay, thank you. I believe that covers the questions that I had. Again, I'm opposed to this because, you know what, with the prices that I believe that they're going to be selling these condo units at, they are going to be turned into rentals. They're going to be bought by investors, turned into rentals. In turn, it's going to be rented out to Brock students. There's not adequate parking for this land. Talking about reducing the size of the parking spots and stuff like that is ridiculous. There's going to be if there is actually, in fact, 114 spots put in, which I somehow doubt is actually going to be achieved, even at 114 spots, you should assume minimum 2 cars per household, likely 3 to 4 cars per household. We're going to have at least 50 cars parked down the length of Valerie Drive. And it's going to be an abomination. It's going to turn into a slum. That's my opinion.
Okay.
And
thank you, Rebecca.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Bob Odell. Just looking for him.
Right beside you, Taya.
Yeah, there you go. Are you able to turn your video on?
Yes, I am. Hang on.
Thank you. And wherever possible, if you can keep your comments concise and under the 5 minutes. That would
Okay,
be...
yeah, Taya, you've received my 2 pages of comments I turned in earlier, and I expect you'll be responding to those as you've indicated. First of all, I want to say that the Planning and Building Services notice that came out on March the 23rd, I did not receive until March the 29th, just pointing that out. It did indicate that this is a matter that involved stacked townhouses. Stacked townhouses was something I'm very familiar with after being in the planning development business for the last 45 years, but I could not find that definition in any of the city's documents, which led to a lot of confusion. I'll let John Crossingham deal with that matter later. Now, Taya, I've submitted supplemental questions. Do you want me to go through those first?
Whatever you would like.
Okay. All right. First of all, will the proponent apply for a condominium exemption bylaw, or have they already? Mike, where is he?
So no application for condominium has been approved or has been submitted at this time, but as we've heard in the discussion, there is intention that these would be condominium tenure.
Just so everybody understands, once the site plan agreement is approved, the exemption is applied for, and again, it is a matter that goes to staff, does not go to the public. Now, I'm going to deal with some on-site matters that we have concern with. Will waste collection for blocks 1 and 2 be curbside on Glendale and Valerie?
So the review of the proposal so far has indicated it will be private waste collection for the development.
Oh, it's private waste collection.
Yes.
Okay. So, got it. Will a turnaround be provided at the end of lanes for blocks 3 and 4 for any garbage trucks and especially fire trucks?
So the private road layout that has been proposed has been reviewed by fire and with the turning radius in mind for those trucks.
There are no turning radiuses there, and you're to provide me with a copy of the engineering department's report?
Yes.
I haven't received it yet.
No, it's on my list.
Why isn't the fire lane extended to the end of lane between blocks 1 and 3? Normally, in my experience, fire routes are to be within 15 meters of a principal residence. And I see a principal residence at the block 3, which is far beyond 15 meters.
So yes, we, as I say, the site plan is reviewed by fire services, and this is still a working site plan application. It's not all approved at this
Well, I
time.
expect to see that comment and how they're going to handle it. 'Cause
Okay.
it doesn't work now.
Okay.
Okay. There is no turnaround for garbage or other vehicles at the end of the lane serving blocks 5, 6, 7, and 8. Right? Now, you've indicated to me that there will be private waste collection. And if there is, where are the enclosures?
So yes, there are no enclosures shown on the plan right now, and it is.
I see no enclosures. And as a result of that, it appears to me that, again, one of these elements that is key to this project going ahead has to be accounted for. It wasn't. Okay. Because there's no secondary access to this project, that means that units will have to be sprinklered, I think, beyond, what was the old number, 90 meters or something? Is that the intention?
So at this point, I don't think there's been any intention that I'm aware of to sprinkler those. I think we're still working through the fire conformity, meeting those requirements. I don't know if Mike, if I've missed anything, but I believe that is the intention, that it would meet those requirements for fire.
Yeah, I can tell you that we have engaged the firm that's doing a building code compliance report, and they will be filing that with the building permit applications in the future.
Well, before the building permit, I'd expect that during the site plan commenting process.
Again, it's in progress right now, and we usually do that as a course of developing the marketing plan. So
marketing plan.
Yes, floor plans. So it is something. It is not required for the site plan submission, but again, we do it obviously because we're concerned with the code as well. So whatever requirements there are as far as sprinklers, etc., we obviously want to know that as well. So we're incorporating that obviously into our costs.
Okay, now park. There is no park located within this development. Is there park in lieu of dedication here?
Yes, cash
And
in
what
lieu of
will it be
parkland.
used for?
It will go towards the city's larger plan for parks and community
It will go
recreation.
into a general.
Can I just jump in? It goes into the Parkland Dedication Fund.
Parkland dedication. Yeah, that's what I meant, Mike. Sorry, Matt. Yeah. Okay, regional comments on the traffic study. Have you received them? I don't think so.
Yes, we have.
Oh, you have? I would like a comment of those, please. Now, I will tell you, as I indicated to earlier, we have sent the traffic study to our traffic engineering company for a peer review. We would like sufficient time for that peer review to take place. I will provide you that time period within the next 2 days. Related to that, was there a parking demand analysis done here?
Not that I'm aware of. And I just want to note that 5 minutes has passed. So if you can work through the remaining comments.
I think just if I could jump in, some of those comments, maybe like that other review and all those things, if you can just get back to everybody, Taya, and explain like all these issues. It's difficult going through this, everybody asking questions. It's better just to state the comments, and then you could probably supply all of us with a review of all those comments with the input of.
Sorry, Matt. My most important comment here is the traffic speed on Glendale Avenue. It's a regional road. There are no signs from Glen Ridge to the Penn Center saying 50 kilometers an hour, first of all. Secondly, the traffic, and we all know it, travel between 60 and 80 clicks along that entire area. Therefore, there should be some consideration to moving the pedestrian activated crossing at Caroline potentially to Valerie to allow for safe access to the bus depot across the street and the park.
That's a great point. It's Matt again. And also, I think it might be good to reach out to the school board to see if there's any plans for the future of Briardale School, just in case, because that would impact a traffic study if they ever decide to make it back to a JK to grade 6 school again.
Fair enough.
So
my last point quickly is that there does not appear to be an emergency access into this property. There's one access point. It's a six meter, excuse me, a 6 meter roadway. There should be a second entrance for emergency purposes to the property.
Okay, thank you. That's all your comments?
Yes, you have my stuff, I think, already.
Yes, I've received your questions in writing, so I will be getting back to you on those following the meeting.
Yep.
And then I've taken notes on the additional requests.
Okay,
from
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I have Mark Groves. Do we have Mark Groves on the phone or on the call? Not seeing Mark. Okay, so the next person I have is Genevieve. Do we have Genevieve? No. Okay, I'll move along then. If at the end, I'll come back to those people just to make sure that if they join the call later, that they have the opportunity. So next, Colleen Thibodeau.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you able to turn your video on?
No, I can't. I think
Okay.
you had to.
That's okay. Go ahead with any of your comments.
Okay, so basically, I just wanted to say, I think everyone understands that we have to change with times, and yes, we have vacant land, but why is it that they're picking stackable townhouses? We know where we're located. We're at the corner of Glendale, Glen Ridge, Brock University. It really isn't fair to us as community members here that we're going to deal with this. There was an article in the Pelham paper that Mountain View tried to build these, and there's the council blocked it. So I'm not sure why we're going ahead with this. I have no problem if you want to build just like across from Sir Winston, $900,000 condos, perfect. But stackable homes, yes, we all know that you have a right to build what you want. They can rent them out. We know what they're going to be. And it's not fair to us that have lived here. Parking is ridiculous. We deal with Brock University now. It's only going to get worse. That's my next thing is, if you're talking that going to be condo status, I've looked at condos. We've been looking at moving. Some condos say right in them that you can't rent them out. So is that a possibility in your condo structure? You have rules. That would be fine. We just know what this is going to end up with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. And next I have Lori.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
So 2 points. I mean, many things were covered that I already wanted to discuss, but further about the traffic concern. So even if I was an owner of one of the units and there was only one exit and entrance, and imagine you're all trying to get to work at 9 o'clock in the morning, it does not make any sense. They will be backed up even within the units, let alone Valerie and Glendale. So I think there definitely needs to be another access, emergency access. What if somebody's in labor? So I mean, there's just, it's going to cause that way too much like bottleneck. That's going to be crazy. even as an owner of that unit, that would be insane. And then garbage, now that they brought that up, I didn't even think about that point, but it made me think of, there are rats, lots of rats in this area. When they started bringing up all of this sewage and doing all of the water stuff they were doing before, it brought up tons of rats in our garden, like just crazy. And the back of the church is right on my backyard. So if garbage is going to be any sort of an issue, that will get, out of control as well with 72 units. And especially if they are Brock students that are not as clean as, no offense, because I also work at Brock. So it's not a generalization, but it's a realization. I am surrounded by renter units, so I can already see, we can tell the lawns that are not as, manicured as the others. So yeah, garbage and traffic. Those are and everybody else. And also the two, why is it that on Woodside, they have one-sided parking and we have both sides? We had an accident even just in our backyard, in our driveway, because people are parking along there. And it was because of church traffic, but now it will be because of that traffic, that there won't be enough visitor parking. So where do you think they're going to park? They're going to park right here. So everything else has been already said, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, and next up I have Leslie Lywood.
Hello.
Hi.
My concern, the pictures that you put up of the proposed development, what the actual units are going to look like. You have a garage, which most people can't use because all their extra crap goes into it. And in front of that, you have space for one car. One car. You don't seem to have any spaces left for, say, visitors, overflow. What are you going to do about all those cars? We don't want them on our street. I live on Queen's Court, which is a very small street with a very small circle on it. When we had large funerals at Mountain View, the overflow was on our street. We couldn't get out of our driveways. One, people don't know how to park on a circle. So the streets are half blocked with their cars. We can't get out. If we end up with all of these cars on our little circle, as well as up and down Port Valerie, that's just going to be unbelievably tense. Really. That's my big concern right now. Everything else has been addressed, hopefully. So I thank you, and I'm out. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, next I have Ed Tolenko. Ed, if you can unmute yourself and put your video on. I'm wondering if Ed, oh, there you go.
Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, just about everything has been said about the traffic, but my major concern, of course, is the entrance to the place. It's right on Valerie Drive. And, that sort of leads me to believe that why did we call the development 50 Glendale when the entrance to the project is really Valerie Drive? It's probably not called Valerie Drive development because that sounds a little less intimidating than 50 Glendale Avenue. Anyways, there's no question in my mind that it's going to eventually be a student housing development. There's no question. A student resident, major student resident. It's going to be rented out to students. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's happening all over. So consequently, parking is going to be a problem. But the entrance being where it is a invitation for you coming out that entrance and turning right all along Valerie Drive, Bryan, Woodside, and up to Glen Ridge Hill. I mean, it's just going to be a constant flow of traffic and back and forth on those particular streets. And with students, you're probably going to end up with a few motorcycles in there. And I'll tell you, a few motorcycles going up and down this street, you'll hear them. So I thought if this thing has to go through, that the possible thing to assuage that in some capacity would be to move that entrance onto Glendale Avenue. Now, I know it's a regional road and I know it's more difficult to get permission, but it has been done. There's been 2 roads, 2 driveways, 2 developments on the other side of Glendale that have entrances running off Glendale. But at least that, and you block off that particular, or at least make it only a service entrance or something, at least that wouldn't be as an encouragement to just take Valerie Drive up. At least some of the traffic may go on to Glendale and may go to Glen Ridge and up Glen Ridge that way. So that really is my comment. And I'm hoping that there may be some way of giving that some consideration.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Ed. Excellent. See if I can get you to, if that was all of your comments, or did
Yes.
you have more? Okay, excellent. I can get you to mute and turn off your video again, please.
Oh, okay, sure, right, all right.
Thank you. And next I have Elizabeth O'Brien.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, yeah, so most of my concerns have been covered. I'd just like to touch on my biggest concern, which is the size of the development. So the size being for the neighborhood. So this will be the only R3 zone development in our neighborhood. It's all zone, like the R1, so zone low density residential. The 2 closest townhome developments across from Glendale on either side of the park are actually like a low R1 zone, I believe. And they are the, like bungalow style townhomes, which I think are more appealing to the residents here in the neighborhood. Just the height of the townhouses. So I wasn't aware you had an artist, like a rendering of it. So I had submitted examples. You don't need to show them now. But yeah, so the height. So basically this is going to be the only large townhouse development anywhere close, in the neighborhood. I know people have talked about the one across from Sir Winston, but like other people have said that is a, they're going for a lot more money and they're a lot more attractive to people, not so much students. So I am going to say that the design of these condos, I guess they are now, I believe are suited for students. First of all, they're walk-ups. They have no yards. I can't see any seniors, even families wanting to purchase these. They're all 3 to 4 bedrooms, which, again, attractive to for investors to students. I'd also like to just mention that I've read the Garden City plan, and I know that it takes into consideration the form, scale, and height of a development, especially an infill for the neighborhood. So this being the only, 3-story development, even close, like there's nothing comparable in the neighborhood. Even on Glendale, Glen Ridge, those are all R2s, and they are 2.5 story. So I'm not sure how the Garden City plan recommendations get accounted for allowing an R3 to sort of place itself in a R1 community. So that, I guess, is a question.
Okay. And I can answer it in brief form here, but if you want me to go in more detail, I can certainly follow up in writing if you wanted to send something in. Sure. But with the R3, the medium density, the setbacks then sort of reflect based on the height of the buildings. So a lot of, for the apartments, for example, the setbacks required are based on the height proposed, and that's implemented in our zoning to help with that fit and form, to make sure that as a building gets taller, it should be farther away from lot lines. So just as a quick example of how that's applied through our zoning.
Okay. And I did mention in an email about the former moratorium on infill development for that reason. So it was, I know it was for houses, and it was for large houses being placed in neighborhoods that really didn't fit the neighborhood. They were too big. They overshadowed their neighbors. So, this is a perfect example of a development that really doesn't suit the neighborhood at all in terms of height and density. So my second concern, of course, is the traffic. So I know a lot of people have touched on the traffic study, and I know it follows the Niagara region, their guidelines, their traffic study guidelines. I too have found several flaws with it. The time that it took in January, of course, pedestrian and cycling traffic is, very low. Also, I know the guidelines talk about special consideration being given to certain areas such as tourist. They gave an example as tourist areas because their peak hours or peak, traffic and whatnot are at certain times of the year. So for the summer, for example, in say Clifton Hill. So our neighborhood, I think, should be given special consideration because we have, 25,000 students coming to town for September to April. We also have 2 malls. So in December, the traffic around here is just incredible, trying to get out onto Glendale. So I really think the day that they chose, it was the best day for them, but not for us. So I'd like to see that done again and using like a better day. Also, it did leave out a few other factors. So it didn't incorporate at all the Niagara Region transit buses, only the city buses. So the transit buses pass Glendale 6 days a week, 2 routes from, I think it's 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So those weren't included. Valerie Drive is a school bus route that wasn't included. And of course, traffic gets backed up because of the school bus. The city buses also block Valerie Drive since the bus stop is on Glendale and too close to Valerie. So if a bus is picking anybody up, it actually blocks the entire Valerie Drive entrance. Also, they were supposed to mention developments in the area and how that affects the traffic. They failed to mention the expansion at Brock, the Canada Summer Games, the massive Glendale Niagara District Plan, the 2 new high-rise condo buildings. I'm not sure the timing of the traffic study that they did, but those aren't included and they're almost complete. And also that Glendale is part of the Niagara wine route cycling path. Yeah, that's not even mentioned. So all of those things, their traffic study is basically irrelevant for, giving any sort of information for what the future of traffic. So I think everything else, all of my other concerns were covered. And I'm just, I'll send anything else to you, Taya.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have Steve Trop.
Hi, sorry, you caught me in the middle of drinking my coffee.
Sorry.
Quick question before I begin, and it relates specifically to the terminology being used. And I don't know, Taya, if you can answer this or if the developer can answer this. The term stacked townhome, is that an industry term relating to property development that's new and on the market? Or is it a term used within the sphere of planning within the city?
So stacked townhouse refers to a sort of building type, and it just refers to the fact that the units themselves are sort of stacked one on top of another within a townhouse form. So each unit has an access or an entrance from the outside, but they are stacked on top of each other, rather than the traditional townhouse that's just standalone and you have them side by side. These units are broken horizontal and vertical. In our city zoning bylaw, we don't have a definition for stacked townhouses, so they do fall under our definition of apartment building.
Okay, so then that having been said, should the marketing plan then be altered to refer to them properly? Because I think part of the concern and the issues that I've been seeing brought up by various individuals is the perception that these are townhomes. And therefore, under the official plan and under the zoning bylaw, they're allowed a maximum construction height of 11 meters. So where did the city make the determination? And if you can point me towards the documents or the official records, that these stacked townhomes are now determined to be under the umbrella of apartments.
So yes, in our zoning bylaw, under the definitions, the definition for townhouse is specific to units that are divided vertically only. So adding in the horizontal division between units, that then falls under our definition for apartment building, because we don't have an explicit definition for stacked townhouse in that bylaw currently. So the definition for apartment building includes a building with units divided horizontally and vertically.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I understand. So then I'm proposing, and I guess this is now no longer directed at you. It's directed at the developer to maybe change the marketing. And I understand maybe it's not as flashy or marketable from that perspective, but to reflect the reality of what they are is apartments as opposed to townhomes. I think that would eliminate a lot of the confusion moving forward as to bylaws and zoning requirements within the submitted plan. Okay. Again, like a lot of the individuals that have spoken very well tonight, many of my concerns have been already proposed. I'm just going to bring up a couple things relating to my specific property and echo a couple of the points that have been made. And the number one thing, I want one point to bring up about the traffic plan that nobody has seemed to have addressed thus far. It was done at a time period where Brock University was not in session. When that university is in session, there are 20,000 plus students. Now I know that not all of them have access to their own personal motor vehicles, but there is definitely an impact that will be felt that didn't exist at the time of the study. Time of day and all that stuff aside, when you remove a significant portion of the transient population, and I know that may not be the best term to use, that exists in the town, it will skew the results of that study. So that's my only singular point about that. I live at 6 Queens Court. My house backs onto the back parking lot of the church. What would be, according to the site plan of what you showed in your presentation today, along the interior side lot line, the south side. Therefore, according to the proposed development, I will suffer a significant loss of privacy in my backyard. One of the things that I paid a premium for when I purchased this house 6 years ago was the fact that there are no rear neighbors. And while it's not necessarily a tangible line item that exists within real estate sales, it is known, and I'm sure the developer can attest to this, it is known that having no rear neighbors brings a premium to the purchase price of the home. Because that will be lost with the proposed development in a very significant way, I will see, and those individuals that are surrounding that property will see a certain loss of property value and marketability of our homes when it comes time to sell. This combined with the fact that those houses that are being, or those townhomes that are being proposed to be built, in my specific instance, it's going to be the quote unquote street townhomes, they're still 3 stories tall. And the setback from my property is ranging between 5 point something meters to 6 point something meters. I don't have the specific site plan here with me. That's still fairly close. That's like 13 to 16 feet. And putting a 3-story structure, albeit facing sideways, will mean a significant loss of privacy for me. I've invested tens of thousands of dollars into my backyard over the years to make it, quote unquote, my own private little oasis. And now everything that happens in that backyard will have to be taken into consideration that we could be under observation at any given time by individuals that live in this development. Furthermore, the decks that are planned to be added onto the 2nd-story exits of these townhomes will also face over top of all of our fence lines, allowing observation from everyone that lives in the development of what happens in our backyards. Now, there is a landscape plan that includes a certain number of trees, and I know I'm short on time here. I can tell by your face, of trees, but the landscape plan leaves a wide open gap at my house. There's no trees being placed there at all. And finally, the utilities easement that runs along our back fence will encroach upon a new fence that I had put in 3 years ago, and will no doubt compromise its integrity based on the digging and the excavation that needs to take place. And one last thing, it's my bonus point. Again, echoing the comments of other people, the official plan makes reference to in numerous places of the integrity and the feeling of the certain neighborhoods and the desire for St. Catharines to maintain those things. We live in an area of low-rise R1 residential units, bungalows for the most part, some side splits. I propose, and I know that the developer is not going to like this, because the developer is in the business of maximizing profit per square foot of development. But if they create a new plan where it is more executive type bungalow housing, lesser density, it will be better reflective of what the desires are and the feeling and integrity of the neighborhood. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Okay, next on the list, and Steve, if you don't mind just turning your video off as well. Thank you for muting too. Next I have Elena or Elena.
Hi, everyone. I think all of my concerns were already addressed. The only one, I have a question. Has the region considered the fact that traffic study was done during stay-at-home order? So that may affect numbers very well, you know. So like 4 people in our house, 4 adults, we stay home. So there was no traffic from our home. and the same for others' home as well. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and next I have John Crossingham.
Good evening. My name's John Crossingham. I live at Unit 7165 Glendale Avenue. I am a retired lawyer. I spent 42 years in the planning and municipal development game. You are being sold a bag of bump. You may remember Donald Trump. And Donald Trump made a career of repeating inaccuracies so that people eventually swallowed them. And one of the great inaccuracies that you have been subjected to is that somehow this stacked townhouse is an apartment. That is where the city is bare ass to the wind, in case you were wondering. So let me tell you how I got to this conclusion. Taya, do you want to put up the my email there? I trust I have your attention. Good. Okay, so I started, as Tara did this evening, with the zoning. Can you scroll this down a little there? And it shows in my little highlighted yellow there, the subject site, and that is institutional 2. So let's keep going down. And we see institutional 2 zoning down a little further. There we are, a little yellow circle, that the permitted uses under a medium density R3 zone are permitted. Okay, let's go down a little further, and we got to hit that little swing thing at the top. I hope nobody's subject to motion. There we are. Okay, so what this shows is that there are a bunch of permitted uses running down to townhouses, and that's where I got. We'll stop here for a minute. So I sent a letter to the city saying, well, wait a minute. There's only townhouses, not stacked townhouses on this site, because of course, townhouses are vertically divided and stacked townhouses are divided horizontally and vertically. So I said, you can't have stacked townhouses. Now, this morning, while I passed my Zoom test so I could be here, I found out that the city thought these were apartments. Apartments. I'm the king of England. There's no way that a stacked townhouse walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, swims like a duck, or flaps like a duck. A stacked townhouse is a stacked townhouse. And, just in case you were wondering, why don't we go on down a couple more screens? Because that's where the apartments are, and we'll just go past those because they're not really relevant. Now we got to flip again. Okay, so now we're back to the zoning definitions, and we run down and we see that townhouses are only divided vertically. So we'll go down a little further. And now what we have here, we go down to dwelling, stacked townhouses. Okay, this is an excerpt from the final draft zoning bylaw in 2013. And in 2013, when the city passed its final zoning bylaw, it considered stacked townhouses, and it put in a bunch of much more restrictive constraints on how stacked townhouses were to be developed. And then when the final bylaw went through, it disappeared. And we're left with the definition of apartments here, which could be just about anything. But if any of you think that an apartment building of 24 units has 24 separate individual entrances into it under any rational definition of what an apartment is, then you're entitled to swallow this development. But if you don't, and I strongly suggest that you shouldn't, then what you need to do is hit the city where they aren't, which was General Patton's principal question or principal resolution for how to handle the Germans. And you hit them where they aren't because you take them to court and you demand that this city justify the interpretation that somehow in the English language, the word apartment has any concept that will include what this abomination is. That requires a lawyer, and lawyers, I want to tell you, are occasionally useful. And I strongly suggest that the people who are affected by this get a good one, and can't be that because I have been retired for 6 years. But if you win that court application, this whole development has to go through not only a rezoning, but an official plan amendment. And
John?
those are the highest tests.
So I'm just gonna note you've had 5 minutes, so if there are any
Well, thank
summary
you. You've been
comments.
trying to shut me up since I started this process, going through that ridiculous test exercise on Monday, Easter Monday. So I'm going to go now and switch entirely. If anybody hasn't got that message, I give up. I want to talk about site compatibility because I've done a number of these developments. My face is on dartboards and basements everywhere. So let me tell you, the development in the bottom pocket corner of townhouses should be no more than 2 stories. The fringe development along the western boundary should start off as 2 stories and go to 3. And the development along the front of Valerie should be split in 2. I do not know what the poor guy or gal at the last house in Valerie ever did to the planning department at the city of St. Catharines, but they have thrown them under the bus. Literally. That there is no way that the development should be permitted to have its major entrance against an R1 zoning. What needs to happen is that this development needs to internalize its impacts. And it does that by pulling back from the edge and by moving the major impact of traffic away from the residentials and into the center of Valerie. And while we're at it, thank you, Alana, you get a gold star. You figured out that they ran this traffic study during COVID. Good for you. And I also want to thank Bob Odell for raising the issue of moving the now defunct kindergarten grade 6 crossing light from Caroline so that the kids, or whoever, even if they are only university students, can get across Glendale, which is the only east-west corridor in South St. Catharines. And I hope you've had as much fun as I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to get my list back with the participants. Okay, next on my list, I have Dave Gillis. I don't know if David, did you want to speak?
No, everything's fine. I'm just observing, I tell you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. After David, I have Jennifer Riches.
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my video there, I think. There we go.
I can see you.
So I guess at this point in the meeting, I mean, everything's been said great by all the rest of my neighbors. And thank you for some very strong speakers and for covering all the comments that were on my list. So I just had a question to direct to the counselors tonight. After listening to our neighborhood comments and concerns, could you say what you believe the positive points would be for our community with this proposed new build going through?
So I'm not sure if the counselors want to answer that question here, or if they want to connect separately, or if they even want to you know, it's not requiring a council decision, so there's no need for them to state a position on this. So I just want to make sure that they know that they don't have to, but if you want to say something, they absolutely can.
It's just
As public representatives, their input is valuable. They should probably answer something, yes.
And what exactly are you looking for us to answer? If we think it's valuable to develop a piece of property, or
well,
like I'm familiar with the property as well. I've lived in South End St. Catharines my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Do I agree with that? Would I like to see something a little bit less dense? Probably. The problem we have here is that this development, and correct me if I'm wrong, Taya, complies with certain elements, and it's not a council decision. The idea of an open house was Councillor Kushner and I believe a year ago, when significant developments were coming forward, we asked that there be community engagement. So it could exactly provide this forum where people could actually, like the developers or the potential developers, could hear the concerns of the community. So some of these things could be addressed. Me personally, I like to see things that fit a little bit better in communities. So perhaps not 3 stories high or stacked townhouses. So I don't know if Councillor Kushner wants to comment as well.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer.
Joe?
Councillor Kushner, we can't hear you at the minute.
Can I just say another thing? When we're talking about things like sidewalks and speed limits and things like that, those are things that Councillor Kushner and I can address right away. So if there are concerns about the speed limits, signs posted on Glendale, things like that, moving the crosswalk or putting in lights, things like that, like email us or call us anytime, and so we can put it on the radar and get some action. So.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, the first comment.
No.
Okay, the first comment I would make, I assume you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, the first comment I would make is that this property was rezoned to institutional in 2013, and that permitted residential development. And the intent at that time was that a church which had more than sufficient land could come to a city and put up residential units. And we see that at Transfiguration, where they severed a piece of property and they put up a nice residential development adjacent to the church for the retired parishioners. And that was the intent. The intent of that change at the time was not to have a wholesale type of development like this, which I consider to be overdeveloped. And I would add that it's not unusual for developers to come in asking for the maximum, and in response to public concerns, they scale down their development. And I would hope that this would be the case for this property. I would also comment that for variances, the proponent must make an application to the Committee of Adjustment, and Taya has already spoken to that. So my question is, if they do not ask for the variances, what would be the impact on that development? What would the number of units be reduced by? Because when I look at the backyard variance, and they talk about reducing it from 11.2 meters to 5.5 meters for a 3-story building, I must say I find that offensive. If I was a developer, I wouldn't impose that on anybody. So my question is, if they withdraw their variances, what would be the impact in terms of reduced units?
So in answer to that question, it really could vary quite greatly. They could stick with the development proposed on the plan as shown and maybe reduce the number of units, or they could change it completely to be an apartment building up to 20 meters high, which is permitted in the R3 zone, and fit a number of units in that type of building form too. So there are many different varieties of development that could work and be permitted on this site in accordance with the zoning without needing variances. And so I can't give a definite number of the number of units that would be allowed without any variances.
Okay, Matt did ask about procedure, and you explained it very well, but what will be the procedure from now on? You've heard the comments, you're going to hear more comments, then you go back, you assess the comments, then do you get back to the community? Or what happens then?
So there is no required additional step to have another open house or come back to the community. There's nothing formal that is required, but I think based on a lot of the feedback that we've heard, that I think at a staff level we'll want to compile a summary and maybe put together some, frequently asked questions and answers and get back to the community with a reference document like that shows what we heard, what the responses are, and give an indication of where this is moving.
Okay, and how would you get back to the community?
At this point, I don't know exactly, but I do have contact information for everyone who registered. So it will be very easy to get in touch with those people. And we can also post it on our website and direct people there for information for those who are interested.
Okay, thank you. And I'll save some of my comments towards the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, did you have other comments?
I just wanted to clarify. So the 8 zoning deficiencies right now, they were all requests to decrease the size requirement. Is that correct?
Correct. So they were to reflect elements of the design that don't meet the requirements. And so they were asking for variances to those requirements.
Right. Okay. Okay. I believe that's everything. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next, I have David Cooperman. And David, are you able? There you go.
Yeah, unmuted.
Excellent.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. It's unfortunate that most neighborhood residents were just made aware of this online open house dated March 23rd. I received it or became aware of it about the 27th, and it was considering the Easter holiday weekend, it was less than 2 weeks. To say that almost all residents in the area are upset, angry is an understatement. Let me emphasize that most residents are not opposed to properly planned and considerate development of the church lands. However, this proposal is outrageous with no consideration to the character of the Glen Ridge, Glendale area. I have 4 comments to make. 1, traffic. It's unfortunate that this traffic consultant appears to have no credibility in view of their myopic view and reporting. Why would staff allow a traffic consultant picked by the developer who would indicate anything that in a thick technical report to substantiate the developer's ulterior motives? The technical items completely miss the overt problems that will occur in this development if it's allowed to go forward. There's an old saying that BS baffles brains. That's true with this. The city must insist on a completely independent traffic report to give to a company a true indication of the potential situation and future problems. Number 2, area site servicing. The homes in this area were developed in the mid-60s with storm, sanitary sewers, and water lines to reflect the entire area from the CNR tracks to the escarpment and to reflect the times and requirements 70 years ago. I don't believe the city services are able to handle the additional requirements this development that will strain the existing city services. 3, student housing. With multitude of existing problems in the South End with student housings compounded by absentee landlords who allow their properties to become derelict with some party-going drinking students, not all, but enough to spoil it. With, make no mistake, with 3 to 4 bedrooms, small square footage floor plates, this will be nothing but a de facto student residence. I repeat, a de facto student residence. Most permanent area residents are either retired or younger families. This inappropriate development will further end the characteristic of the area. It's a shame that both Brock University and the City of St. Catharines do not appear to be supportive of the existing permanent residents, with excuse after excuse how they can't control and won't become involved with the abusive student situations that occur. 4, density and student parking. The proposal of 72 units is too massive and very excessive, notwithstanding the developer will probably submit an application to the city's Committee of Adjustment. Such committees must approve a change in the desired 114 parking spaces. Can you imagine the mayhem along Valerie and Queens Court? In conclusion, I realize this is not a zoning issue. However, most of the area residents overwhelmingly reject this development and are dead against it as submitted. Please listen to the permanent, not itinerant people of the neighborhood, but to the people who have a vested interest in continuing an established lifestyle. To staff and council, do not approve this application as such. It's time the city listened to the neighborhood for the potential and positive input and progressive ideas. This project is not compatible with the neighborhood. It's too bad the city should have had a better insight when they did the new zoning bylaws back in 2014. It will be too bad if all I'm hearing is they conform to this, they conform to that. If a lease pendants is registered against that property, both the city and the developer are going to have to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Okay, next I have Marge Smith. I'm just going to look and see if she is on the call. I'm not seeing her, so I'm going to move on to the next participant, which is Nancy Hayden.
Okay.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi. I'm Nancy Hayden with my husband, Bob. We live directly across from the proposed property on Glendale Avenue. We live in the smaller of the 2 condominium units, corporations on the west side. For 12 years, we have had an opportunity to examine the area and get a feeling of exactly what kind of housing exists and who lives in them. I will not belabor any of the good points that have been made. I will say that I agree with Ed Tolenko. I agree with Rebecca Lewis, both of them commenting on the possibility of more Brock rentals. And I agree with that. I will not go into it. I have 2 personal points to make, not to add to what's been said already. Number 1, the problem of rats is a very real problem in this area. Right behind our property, flowing through the park, is the remains of the creek, and it empties into a sewer on Glendale. I have personal experience. We had a very serious rat problem probably 3 years ago. completely connected to garbage. And the point that Bob Odell made about garbage is very true. With the number of units that are planning across the road and the amount of garbage that will be collected, there will be no doubt that there will be a huge impact on the rat population, and a great deal of care will have to be taken. So that's number one from a public health standpoint. Number two, from a personal standpoint, I'm the one that's sitting in my driveway on Glen Ridge trying to get out into the traffic on Glen Ridge. So although a lot's been said about it, I have a personal experience. I can wait 10 minutes, sometimes more, just to pull out into Glendale. You can imagine how much that would change with 70 some units and 100 so many parking spaces. Those are my two comments. I think all of the rest that's been said, the homework that's been done is excellent. I've been listening, you echo my comments, but those are the two personal things that I could relate tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And if you can mute yourself and turn your video off again, that would be great. And I'll move on to the next participant, which is Ian McMillan.
Good evening, Taya.
Hello.
Much of what I was going to say has been said. I will start off by saying I disagree with David Cooperman that this is not a zoning issue. I think this is totally a zoning issue. It's very disconcerting to hear that the only reason we are considering this is because the zoning for that property seems to have been given because it's a house of worship, and that somehow gets to include multi-unit residential. And that gives the loophole to stick R3 units into an R1 residential area. I think that there's no reason whatsoever why the zoning could not be reconsidered. It was not intended for this purpose in the first place and should be reconsidered. That said, I'll just very quickly summarize what I had intended to say. The density of this unit, as we realize that densification is a fact of life in the city of St. Catharines. That was decided years ago, but this is in the realm of, to me, hyperdensification, and parking is certainly going to be an issue. Current tendency for households in this area is to have more than one vehicle. And in fact, in this neighborhood, it is not at all unheard of to see driveways with 4 or more cars. You could look at the home directly beside Mountain View Church on Glendale and see 4 or 5 cars in that driveway on any given day. 114 parking spots is not going to be adequate. In terms of students, much has been said, but let us recognize that more and more over the past years, this area has become populated by student rentals. Many of us would refer to this as a student ghetto bordering on a slum in some areas. Don't misunderstand me, please. I have little problem with students who are young and inexperienced in looking after property, but I do have a very large issue with landlords. The typical landlord owning property in this area seems to live in Mississauga, seems to visit rarely. Even then, the properties are poorly kept. It is not a challenge to go down the street and recognize the rentals. Rather than calling the area a student ghetto, I think of it as a landlord ghetto. So what does that mean for 150 Glendale? The history of this area over the past 10 to 15 years is clear. The vast majority of family homes that have been sold went to landlords and became student rentals. There's no reason to expect this to change at this point, particularly given the size of the units proposed. Many of the units, no matter how many are built, will be sold to investors, read landlords, and will be rented to students. The average student today seems to have more money than when I was at university, and most of them have cars. During the time that the campus was open, it was not unusual to have many vehicles parked on the street outside rentals. Further, it was common to see students from outside the area drive to the end of my street, Victor Boulevard, park their Lexus or Cadillac, and hop on the bus to go up the hill. Apparently, they can afford luxury cars, so they will have them. 114 parking spots for 72 units means that many of the units will be in need of parking off-site, and guess where that goes? That means the street. A more appropriate solution would be to limit the number of units to allow adequate parking for the honestly expected number of vehicles. I believe that this situation would become worse over time as those owners who buy to live in their units discover the student density and decide to move out. Chances are most of those units then sold would go to more landlords, increasing student density, contributing to more lack of maintenance and more parking issues. The corner has been belabored by all sorts of people. I have experienced that several times. Do not try to come out of Valerie Drive and turn left onto Glendale. Turning right is not much of an issue. Turning left is a horror show. And that's with the current traffic flow. Imagine people coming out of this kind of development and to turn left. A stoplight would be a minimum requirement. And I think that's been mentioned, moving the stoplight from Caroline. I do not have a problem with the concept of densification per se. I have the problem with the concept of densification is going to produce the major issues that have been discussed here, including degradation of the property after it's occupied predominantly by absent landlords and students. And I do think that there's very good reason for consideration or reconsideration of the zoning R3 that seems to be the root of the whole issue as to why this is even being proposed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, next on my list, I have Kevy Sherman and Jeannie Berg.
Okay, I'm halfway there.
Yeah, almost with the video.
Do you need video?
You don't have to, but if you'd like it,
Okay.
you can turn it on.
I'll be brief. I have two things. First of all, is there any estimate or guesstimate of the actual number of people living in that block? Does anyone have any ballpark figure about actually as to how many people are going to be living there?
No, so we just have the units to go on, and the number of people would really vary depending on the tenants or the people who occupy those units.
Not by bedrooms or anything like that?
You could make assumptions, but it would just be guessing at this point.
Okay. Second of all, everything that's been said has been said, and I agree with the most vehement comments. And I would like to yield my 5 minutes to Mr. Crossingham because I think he's right on. And beyond that, I hope it doesn't go through as is. We live at 139 Glendale. We are the same townhouse as another lady who just spoke, Nancy, who just spoke. And I could be spending 5 or 10 minutes leaving the driveway onto Glendale to make a left-hand turn. It is brutal when the students are in. And making right-hand turns are easy, but making left-hand turns are awful when students are in the south end and going to school. The rat problem is a very real one because we encountered it. And I just feel that it's out of place for this kind of a development in this neighborhood at this time. We come from the north end. I had its share of issues too, but I never dreamed that this would happen in the south end. I feel like going back to the north end again if this comes as is, because it's way too dense a population to service. And all the other comments were made ahead of this of me. I thank you for your time, and I hope that something has been. I hope that perhaps that eyes have been opened to all of this, and big changes are made. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, I have Carl Christie.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Being this far down the list, most of my comments and concerns have already been voiced, especially with Mr. Crossingham and Mr. Cooperman. I would like to touch on the so-called traffic study. Really, that is not a study. That is more like a snapshot of what may occur on a winter day. If the region really wanted a traffic study, they should have got off their butt and got into the traffic study and done it themselves instead of a company being hired by the developer, which to me is a conflict of interest right off the bat. So, you know, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. So the results of that study would obviously be in favor of the developer. And a one-day study on a major arterial road as Glendale, which runs all the way from Pelham Road right across the south end of St. Catharines all the way into Niagara-on-the-Lake. You don't do a one-day study, and that's not really a study. So anyway, that's my point about the traffic study. It should be done by the region and done on a longer term basis at different times of the year. The real question I see is about the density, the zoning, and keeping the integrity of the South End neighborhoods in place. And nowhere in the South End do you have R3 zoning. It's all, as other people have said, it's R1 suburban or R2 traditional. And that's the way it should be kept. I don't understand why when the church was sold, I believe last year, why the zoning wasn't automatically changed to residential to, you know, match what already exists. Why was it kept at R3? To me, that is sort of a logical move to make in order to protect the integrity and stability of the neighborhoods. And as planners, that should be your primary concern, is to take care of the communities that you represent. I mean, we're the ones that are paying your salaries through our property taxes. So we should be the primary customers and clients, not the developer. And all steps should be taken to, you know, protect the neighborhoods at large, especially in the South End. Like as other people are saying, the units that are being proposed, there will be a very strong tendency to go into rentals for students. And that should be the number one thing that should be stopped as much as possible, because the neighborhoods down here are slowly changing into student rental housing. And unfortunately, I don't know, maybe in the official plan, it could be written in that renting to students should be only in owner-occupied dwellings and not in landlord-type investment purchases that they turn it over completely to students to live in. And of course, the property goes downhill pretty fast. As you can see what's happening over, I think it's Village Road next to the Penn Center. I mean, that's chaos over there. So that was some of my concerns there. The other thing is the infilling process. Infilling is fine. I mean, the city wants to expand residential housing wherever they can, but I think they're using the infilling process to compensate for the loss of property tax dollars from commercial and industrial sectors in the city. We have a lot of major buildings that are been sitting vacant now for years. Taxes are being lost. So where does the tax burden go to? Residential. And the infilling process is a quick way to recoup a lot of those dollars by intensification and, you know, getting as much tax dollars out of the lands as you can. But it shouldn't be that way. It should be looked at and dealt with in a more civilized manner and in consideration for the people who live in these neighborhoods. Anyway, those are pretty much my comments, and everyone else before me, they've made some great points, and I think the planning department should relook at this whole development and the zoning especially to move it back to R1 and make it consistent with the rest of the South End. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Carl. And Carl, if I can just get you to mute yourself and turn your video off. The next speaker I have is Giovanni.
Hi, I don't want to risk being repetitive. I think all the points have been thoroughly covered. So I yield my time to anyone who might have additional information or additional comments to add. And just to one last quick thing, obviously the city values our input, otherwise this wouldn't be happening. So with that said, I just want to encourage you to keep us in the loop. And you said it's not an obligation to follow up, but I think all the comments and the concerns that were expressed tonight, I think they should be valued. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, certainly there will be some follow-up in some format for this one based on all of the feedback and interest in this. So thank you very much. The next participant is Nathan Putcher.
Hello. It's the one nice thing that's come out of this is I've never realized how many great neighbors I have in our community here. It's like a lot of really interesting people and a lot of really smart people. I'm pretty grateful to have so many nice people living close by. I think a lot of us wouldn't have any issue with this if it actually blended in with the surrounding community. And it's like this townhouse development, it's like old apartment development. It just doesn't fit the area. And it's a really bad sign that the developer is asking for these variances already. They're trying to shoehorn this already big thing into, it doesn't fit the lot, and they want to shoehorn it into this area it doesn't fit. And I mean, it's like we shouldn't even be having this discussion. The builder should have to go back and redraw their plans and then come back to the city and move forward from there. I guess everybody's covered everything else quite well, but it's like this just doesn't fit the community. And once that church is torn down, it should be rezoned back to R1. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Next, I have Dr. Schoen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Walter Sendzik, City Planner Tia Devlin, and our honorable city councilors Kushner and Harris, who are with us tonight. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate. My name is Dr. Anamitra Shom, and I'm an associate professor of accounting at Brock University. It is indeed worthy of appreciation that the city is holding this open house to elicit the opinions of those who will be directly affected by the proposed development. The very fact that the process includes an opportunity for community members to be heard is very heartening. Nevertheless, the community should have been consulted at every step of the way. Why is that important? It's important because of the fact that the people who are affected by any development are in the best position to offer their insights on the effects of the development. I do get it. People who are at the helm of affairs at City Hall, the leaders of the city, would like to see development wherever possible. Proposals for development are enthusiastically welcomed and embraced. However, these leaders must realize that they have a responsibility to their citizens, a responsibility to ensure that any development will not take away from the quality of life that their citizens enjoy, a responsibility to protect the right of their citizens to continue enjoying the quality of life that they have worked so hard for and that they are supporting with their hard-earned tax dollars. Those same citizens who trusted the leaders at City Hall with their future and put them there in the first place with their votes. Leaders of the city must recognize that development without responsibility, development without proper consultation, development without empathy, and development without transparency is no development at all. Instead, it is destruction, it is degradation, and it is a denial of the basic right of citizens to a good quality of life. Like my esteemed neighbors who voice their concerns, I can readily envision the following effects of cramming 72 habitations into an area literally the size of a church parking lot. Immense traffic congestion, significant danger to pedestrians, especially children and seniors, increased potential for unhealthily high noise levels, increased smells, increased litter, increased vermin activity, increased environmental degradation, and significant loss of privacy. It has a very real potential for increased criminal activity and will pose a significantly heightened level of danger to life and property. Most importantly, it will destroy the wonderful character of our neighborhood. I would like to conclude by asking these questions, to which I would appreciate answers, and I think we would all appreciate answers that are frank, forthright, honest, and above all, truthful. My first question is, could you please give us an overview of the timeline for this process from its initiation with the application submitted by the developers for the proposed development to its culmination in today's open house? During this entire process, how many times did the city interact with the developer? And how many times did the city interact with citizens? And my second question is, could you please also let us know whether this open house has any significance in terms of its ability to influence the process? In other words, does the public opinion expressed by concerned citizens at this open house have the ability to alter the course of this proposed development in any way? What I would like to ascertain is whether this open house is a genuine attempt at eliciting the opinions and feedback of community members who are going to be affected by this development, or is it just a mere formality that is called for by the rules governing the process? I would hope that it is the former rather than the latter. Thank you very much, Mayor Sendzik, City Planner Devlin, and Honorable City Councilors Kushner and Harris. I hope and pray that you will do what is right by your immensely concerned and apprehensive citizens. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comments and questions. I think with regards to the overview and timeline and the details that you're looking for, that's something that staff will have to put together to provide you all the information that you're looking for. So I won't be able to give you that answer in full tonight, but I can do that in a follow-up. And your second question about the sort of process here, I summarized it in my presentation a little bit and further to Councillor Harris's question at the beginning of this consultation, just to say that the intent here is to hear from the community, understand the concerns, identify the main themes, and then take that information and understand it and review the plans and the proposal and see what opportunities there are to address those concerns. This process does not require council approval, though. I want to be very clear about that. So there is no process where the site plan would be stopped necessarily by the public, right? Something can be built on this site. And really the point here is to determine what that looks like, what the issues are, and how to address those. So I hope that clarifies the intention here. And
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And our last speaker is Pratik, who's waited very patiently.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for giving me this opportunity. So my wife and two children, one 4.5 years old, the other one is 4.5 months old. We moved to 13 Jasmine Crescent very recently, January 2021, from New Jersey, United States. One of the reasons for which we chose St. Catharines was we could not cross the border to see the house, so we kind of bought this home virtually after losing 5 homes during multiple offers and whatever craziness is going on in the Canadian housing market, or especially in the Ontario market. The reason for the move to Canada was well thought out. Somebody named the 44th United States president, and my wife, she has some background in Canada. She wanted to raise our daughters in Canada, and that kind of prompted me to take this opportunity to move to Canada. And we chose St. Catharines because it is called the Garden City of Canada. So with that background, we already sold our home in United States, where when we bought that home, we followed we were exposed to certain processes like seller's disclosure, the real estate agents, ability to disclose some of the information they know, and also from the city, they also kind of let the buyer know that what is coming on as a development within the city. None of those things exposed us to the information that, right after moving in January, in the month of April, we'll be hearing that this development is going to happen in our backyard, which is very concerning for us. Most of the points which are being made by John Crossingham, Robert Odell, Dr. Shom, Jennifer Lewis, Carl Christie, I noted it down. I agree with all of them. I have also sent one email to you, Taya, so if you can respond to them, I will be appreciating that. There are some of my main concerns are there are 72 townhomes and the stacked townhome, which is new terminology for me. I do agree it is over-congested. It is going to be over-congested for a small piece of land like this. Instead, somebody has already mentioned, I think it was Jennifer Lewis, she was mentioning that if we can make this as a developed area, as a premium executive lifestyle kind of housing, can we look into those kind of opportunities, which will at least make me feel that when I bought the home with a church in the backyard, instead, at least we are having a better than what is being proposed kind of residence. Other than that, particularly about my home, the concerns I'm facing is the Ambria is proposing to remove the existing fence, and we want them to put up a 6 feet 6 inches, which is solid board fencing before the construction starts to ensure our privacy in our backyard. If this plan at all goes through, planting along my property should be enhanced. Currently, Ambria is planting a single row of crimson maples and red oak. They should add larger caliper trees and a second row of coniferous trees, pine or spruce. Also, they should plant lower shrubs to keep the future residents back from the fence. They should also plant shorter fence trees, 8 to 10 feet on my side of the fence to ensure privacy. These are some of the comments what I have, and thank you for giving me this opportunity, Tara.
Okay, thank you very much. I've made a note of your comments and I do have your email to reply back to. So thank you. So that is all of our registered speakers. Thank you to everyone who has taken the time to join us tonight and look into the proposed development and provide your comments and your time tonight. It really is appreciated, and I've taken notes and will be sort of digesting the information and compiling a summary and meeting with the applicant and agent to discuss the general themes, as I said, and then putting together a sort of summary document, as well as getting back to each of you who have provided individual comments to me. So there will be follow-up and further communication. And I guess before we close, I just want to check in with the applicant or agent to see if anyone wanted to say anything or if we want to just digest the information.
There's one point before we close. This is a virtual meeting. The difference between this and an actual meeting is that if it was an actual meeting, we'd be all in the same room and we'd be able to communicate. I have made the point that there's little use in hoping and begging that the city will do something. The only opportunity you've got is to force this development through the planning process by challenging the faulty analysis of the zoning bylaw that's the basis of this entire situation. And to do that, the people who are part of this call need to be able to intercommunicate. And I, for one, am willing to allow my email to be shared with everybody. And if you would come on and tell us that you want that, then I would expect the city to provide all of the participants with the emails of the other participants so that they will be able to communicate. And if they decide that the city needs to be challenged on a faulty interpretation of its zoning bylaw that's led to this fiasco, that they be able to communicate and do something about it.
So
That's my request, and you have my permission to share my email with everybody that's on this call.
Okay, thank you, John. And yes, I don't want to get into anyone sharing their email addresses live over YouTube because I know we have a much broader audience potentially. So I don't want to get into that right now, but certainly if people want to connect outside of this meeting, I'm sure we can find a way to work through that. Thank you for the comment.
Has this meeting been videoed? Is there a recording? Is this recorded? This entire meeting?
It has been, and it's been live streaming on YouTube and will be available on the city's YouTube page after the meeting as well.
So that anybody can take a look and see what has gone on in the 2.5 hours, notwithstanding counselors or the public, correct?
That's correct. It will be available to anyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to check in with the applicant and agent. Mike, if you can confirm, did you want to say anything or do you just want to digest the information?
I mean, yes, we obviously there was a lot, as someone already just mentioned there. It was a long meeting. We were here and we were listening the whole time. So we are going to be, as Tay already mentioned, getting a summary of all those comments. I too have been writing down notes. So I've been going through and listening to all the speakers. And again, thank you everybody for coming out. I think the only thing that I do want to clarify here is that, you know, there were a couple of things that were put out. I just want them to be cleared up. On the traffic, which was obviously the biggest concern, and this will come through in the, I guess, the frequently asked questions and responses. The study, I know some people mentioned that it was done during COVID. It was actually pre-COVID. It was, the counts were done January 2020. So that was before any sort of lockdown. The date on the report and the updates subsequent to, they were, but the traffic counts were actually done pre-COVID. So I do want everybody to understand that there was no underhanded or ulterior motives with that. And the process of a consultant preparing that on behalf of an applicant is the standard practice. That is done on all development applications. So there was nothing at all that was done with the traffic report to be underhanded in any way. So I just want that to be cleared up. And the only other element is, I know that on the surface, when you hear 72 units, individuals may look at that and say that that is high density or hyper density. I know that those comments were put out there. This actually, and Taya has already mentioned this in response to the councillors, this isn't the highest density. We have already looked at what the densities are in the neighborhoods. This is a medium density development. So that plays into it as well. I just want everyone to understand that, you know, the permissions here, as what was the alternative? Yes, the alternative could have been something like a 6-story apartment building. But that was actually not the intention here. It was to provide grade related uses in a medium density format in accordance with the official plan and the zoning bylaws in place. So that was the intention there. It wasn't to get absolutely everything you could on this site. It was to come up with something that was grade related and moving away from an apartment building. So I just wanted those two key points to be clarified there, and there will be more in the, I think, in the responses that Taya's talked about. Okay, so again, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mike. And again, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, I am absolutely available to receive additional comments in writing or over the phone. So I had my information up at the beginning of this presentation. If you are watching this on YouTube, you could rewind back and see it. My email address is tdublin@stcatharines.ca, and my phone number is 905-688-5601, extension 1727. I will be following up to all comments that are provided and questions and answering them, and then putting together a summary as a result of this meeting. So thank you, everyone, for your time again and your participation. And with that, I am going to start the process of ending the meeting and having the live stream stop in just a minute.
Sorry, Taya, I hate to interrupt, but I believe Councillor Kushner said earlier in the meeting that he wanted to save his comments for the end.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Councillor Kushner, did you have summary or ending remarks that you wanted to make?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to comment that Tara has indicated to you, or Taya has indicated to you, that she would take your comments seriously and make some adjustments. And our planning department have done this in the past, and I trust they will do the same for this development. But regardless of whatever happens at the city level, be it at the staff level and or at the Committee of Adjustment, the residents have the option of appealing to the Committee of Adjustment, appealing the decision by the Committee of Adjustment to the Ontario Municipal Board. And the consensus by the neighborhood is that the proposal is an overdevelopment of the property, and that consensus is shared by myself and Matt Harris, and also, fortunately, by a professional planner in the neighborhood and a municipal lawyer in the neighborhood. And I would hope that the developer takes these concerns into consideration and does not necessitate the neighborhood going to an appeal process. That would be the best for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to see if Councillor Harris is also still on the call, if he wanted to say anything in summary. But I'm not seeing him on the call anymore. So thank you again, everybody. And as I said earlier, please send any comments to me and I will be in touch. Thank you so much. And